engagement with their constituents over this issue. So I'm feeling a little bit more sort of comfortable that there are a number of us who are
that's
hacked off, if I might politely say, about this issue.
Okay. Well, I think it's just profile raising, isn't it? And then once you can raise the profile on something, that just helps wider knowledge, doesn't it?
Emma, there was a good article in the Times about it, specifically about Manchester University this week. So I'm particularly pleased that it is suddenly starting to get the profile that we wanted to have.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's not just about the fees, Anthony. You know, it's. I mean, obviously, if we're powerless to stop this, the fees have to be adjusted. But this shouldn't be happening in the first place.
Listen, you're preaching to the choir, the converted on this. I came out of university with £15,000 worth of debt. If someone was going to tell me that we had to do part of it online, I would have either expected a very hefty discount, or I would have reevaluated whether or not I was going to attend university in the first place. So, I'm not going to try and sort of lead you down a path on this. I'm totally with you on it.
Yeah.
I know you said that it's going to be discussed. So when could changes be made? If this is brought up in Parliament, how quickly could this go through to, the September cohort being informed that yes, a certain percentage of their course will be online, therefore we will be adjusting your fees accordingly. How quickly can those things be decided?
Alex, that's a great question. It's not one I can answer because I'm only a backbench MP, so you'll have to make that exact point to the minister and see what response you get. And again, I go back to
Hi, Anthony. Hi. Sorry, everybody, that I'm late. I was in a ministerial meeting about COVID, so I couldn't leave. I was invited last minute. We don't get much sleep over our diaries.
Minister, listen, thank you so much for making the time to do this. It's hugely appreciated, and I really do know how busy your schedule is. So thank you very much. It is massively appreciated. As I think I said to you a few days ago, we've got a constituency group from my patch who I met with a month or so ago to talk about the idea of what is going on regarding online learning at university and their concern around that. I know we have a limited amount of time and I know there are a number of questions, and rather than doing the usual sort of round the corner sort of introductions, I thought if it's all right we might just go straight into questions and a sort of discussion, because I know they're going to get far better answers from you than they will from me on this issue. If that's all right. So, do you mind if I start off with Tiffany, who will introduce herself, and then we'll move to Emma, and then if anyone else on the call could just either raise their hand or just once we get past Emma, we'll just make a noise and we'll come to you.
Okay. Hi, Michelle.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I was going to say I've got to get in the car. You may well lose me because I've got to drive my daughter to a class. So. If that happens, I apologise and I will try and call back in.
Okay.
Thanks, Alex. I've got to register your number. It's appreciated.
Michelle, I've got three lads, 2 at university, 1 due to start in September, and there's obviously huge upheaval with these communications we're getting from the universities that they're going to be blended learning, and we just, the nutshell is, we would like to know what's going on because we just find it unacceptable. And if you know what's going on and if there's anything you can do to stop it, basically, because it's just not a scenario that anybody is welcoming at all.
Yeah, which universities are they going to in
So Manchester, he's due to start in September. I've got someone in year 2 at Southampton and someone in year 1 at Birmingham.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, we put out guidance in line with the moving into step 4. And we've said that universities don't have any restrictions over the way that they teach and that they will run classes, etc. They just have to do risk assessments and, of course, scenario plans, so that if, for instance, we ended up in an environment where we had a new variant that was vaccine-proof, for instance, that they would have a sort of step-down process. But from a government perspective, there are no longer going to be any restrictions at all on the way that universities teach in the autumn. That said, some of them have taken learnings throughout the pandemic. So, for instance, a number have shown that lectures being online has a great deal of value. Students can replay the lecture, they can watch it again and again. And so some of them are saying that they want to do the tutorials and the other stuff in person and offer the lectures online. Now, universities in law in this country are autonomous, so they have the full ability as to decide as to how they're going to teach. We can't dictate that of them, but we do have an office for students that regulates them, and they have to meet the quality threshold. And we have made it very clear that if they're going to continue any element of blended or do fully in person in autumn, it has to continue to meet that quality threshold. They still have to be producing the same amount of quantity of actual teaching, and it's got to be accessible to all. Now, some universities have not been very clear in their communications about what their plan is for autumn. And so my strong piece of advice is, first of all, contact the specific university and the faculty within that university to ask them directly, how are they going to be teaching in autumn? And then you can always go back to Anthony when you've got that information. I mean, you might have already done that, and you can let me know. Some of them may have been more vague, waiting to see, step 4's happening. Some of them were probably more cautious and communicating more about their plan B than their plan A, which I tried to tell them not to do, because they should be planning for plan A, which is the best case scenario that we're all moving into now, and keeping plan B in their pocket. Yeah,
I don't think, and I feel that everyone probably agrees, that this has got anything to do with COVID anymore. I think this is a big push that it's an opportunity. This is what it seems to be that they are using to move online for reasons that we're trying to fathom, be it financial, be it to sell off their buildings, be it to bring in more overseas students. But I don't think it's got anything to do with COVID, and it seems to be a drive from all universities. I mean, it's not. I don't feel it's acceptable, and they've also saying that they're not going to reduce the fees, even if they are able to proceed with this move. And I mean, it's a worrying move, and it's a worrying step in the wrong direction. And as government, I mean, I think we all feel that they've not been publicly criticised by the government, and that was one of my questions. Do you plan to do that? Do you plan to have any statement? And is there any plan in government to do anything to try and manage this? Because is it going to go completely online? I mean, where's it going to stop?
Yeah, so I think we have to be really careful, because the media have not really articulated what is going to happen in universities in the autumn correctly. So if you read the papers, you would assume that every university is going to be blended, if not mainly online. But when we have looked at this and we've spoken directly to universities, that's not actually what's happening. Now, some universities are not the best at communicating and getting across, what their plan is, and that's hindered the situation. So some of the universities I've spoken to that have been name checked in these papers have told me, no, we're keeping that element because our student surveys have shown that element, be it the lectures or something, is in the interest of our student, and we want to keep that for all of eternity, because we've learned from the pandemic, we've digitalised, nothing to do with COVID, as you've said, and it's 20% online and 80% in person. But I'm sure that if you've got those live examples, you can communicate that to Anthony, and I can certainly speak to those individual universities and double check whether that is the reality. What have the universities said? I know we've got to get other people involved, but have you contacted the faculties that your sons are going to, and what have they actually said about the proportion online in person?
No, it's been, like you say, very vague, and that's the worrying thing, I think, for us.
Yeah, so I think they're being vague because they were kind of, so the students are consumers. And the CMA were very clear that they need to be clear on what students can expect, but also then students can hold them to account over that. So they were probably being vague to be careful, so that if the pandemic worsened and they had to go more online, they weren't held to account on that. But they are entitled to get that information. So please do contact them. Anthony can help you. Yeah. And if they come back and say, no, 80% online, then I can call them up and try and find out exactly why, because that's certainly not what we would like to be seeing them doing. As the rest of society is opening up, we don't want HE to be left behind.
No.
And just to add to the Minister's point, there is still a minimum standard that universities are required to meet. So despite what is being presented in the media, we need to make sure that we're absolutely crystal clear. So Tiffany, if you are happy, whether it's for Birmingham, Manchester or other, then let me know, and I will be hot onto the Minister about whether or not we're meeting the standards and also whether or not those universities are responding to you. So just please
Yeah.
keep me in the loop on it.
I understand about standards, and that's a very good point, but I guess it's also about, it's like Howard says, standards is a very subjective thing, isn't it? It's difficult to measure, but it's not just about that. It's about the student life. It's about, the culture we have in our country, and that our young children go to university to be away and to be young and independent and not to sit in their rooms. And I think that's the worrying trend that we're seeing. But as you say, I take your point, Michelle, and I think more research is needed from our side. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Right, Emma, I think you want to...
Can I add something to that, please? I also think, I'm Alex. I have 3 daughters. My eldest daughter's in her 3rd year of a dentistry degree at Bristol University, and my second daughter has just completed her 1st year as a Heart Scholar at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, and we have an 18-year-old too. I'm just really interested generally talking about the standards in education that, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's slipped full stop. Regardless of COVID, I think the expectations on the students are just not set high enough anymore. And I think many of them are feeling that. My eldest daughter, for example, will go to lectures, this is pre-COVID really, and there will be minimum people sitting in the lectures with the excuse that, well, we can look at it online. And my concern is that all of this is just going to exacerbate it unless the government puts pressure on the universities that the students need to attend a certain percentage of lectures in person. I just don't see that they will do it. And I think it's, part of going to university is, as Tiffany says, it's about...
We're 100% committed to that. We've got the Augur review, which is a review of higher education that will be responded to in the autumn, and some of the work around that is about raising the quality as well in our higher education. So certainly we are doing that.
And Alex,
I do disagree with about the inflation of grades. We know many young people. I think I know only one person who's left university with a 2-1. They've all got firsts. And when I did my degree, it was a minimal amount of people. And I think particularly last year, I understand they maybe wanted to give some people the benefit of the doubt, but still, there's no way I think you can say that grade inflation has been curbed.
Well, look, I'm not saying that there is no problem. I'm saying we've managed to curb it, but there is still a problem, and that's why we want to continue to raise quality across the board in all courses, and also ensure that students go into these courses with their eyes open, that they're going to lead to graduate jobs at the end of it, that they're going to get good outcomes as well, that because it's not just universities for university's sake. This is an agenda that we've got about opening up opportunities to young people, be that FE, apprenticeships, higher education, but ensure if they do pick higher education, they're on the right course to lead them where they want to go, but also that the quality is there. So 100% there is a problem with grade inflation. We're tackling it, but we've not solved it, should I say.
Alex, thank you for that. I'm going to go to Rebecca Gilmore, if that's all right.
Hi there. Yeah, I just wanted to take up the point you said about the universities have found, that digitalising the lectures has been very useful for some people. This has been going on. They could already do that. They could already watch, before COVID, they could watch their lectures online if they didn't want to, pitch up to the lecture room. That's already been on. The point is, it very much sounds as if they're not going to be having big mass lectures anymore. I think COVID is just a distraction. This is something, as I understand the letter from the University of Manchester, very much said this is something we've been planning for a long time, and we're bringing it forward, basically. So it isn't. Yes, digitalisation is great, but they could do this already. They can watch them back already if they didn't want to go. But they're not being now. They're not. It sounds as if they're not going to have the opportunity to go to the lectures.
Yeah, that's how we understood it.
Yeah, so some offered before the ability to watch recordings of lectures, not all. So some were more advanced in that area. But the difference here is that the higher education sector is different to schools or even further education colleges. They are fully autonomous in law. They can completely decide how they teach.
So do you have any power over them at all?
No, because in legislation they are completely autonomous. Where we have the power is with the regulator if they were not meeting the quality bar. So if their actions to remove in-person lectures reduced the quality and then they were in breach of their registration condition, yes, then we would have a power over them. But they are complete independent institutions in legislation. We only set, for instance, the maximum tuition fee. We don't set the minimum, but throughout the pandemic, they all continue to charge the maximum. So our levers are much more limited than the likes of schools. In the pandemic, I had a number of questions from students as to why was the Prime Minister standing up doing all these announcements about removing examinations for GCSE and A levels, but we were saying nothing about assessments in universities. Again, because we don't decide the way that courses are assessed in universities. Universities do. So it is a very different sector. But in regards to the specific issue of Manchester, I mean, I would urge you to, and you can do this via your MP, to write to them with your concerns and state that, as a student there, you don't find that useful and that you don't find it value for money online. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's the impression I'm getting. And that you would like to know the justification for this. And I would also urge you to contact your student union at Manchester as well, and try to get that voice heard. I mean, do you know whether other students have contacted the university and feel the same way that you do about this?
I tried. I got a group of students together to write statements about it to send to my university, and the answer we got is basically COVID. That's what they said, and then just use it as an excuse to justify why these things are like this.
Well, I mean, they can't have it both ways. Either they're doing it in September because they think it is more enriching for the student, or they're not, because we haven't put in place any restrictions around COVID. Okay, so it can't be based on COVID. I mean, I'm happy to, it's come up twice now, the University of Manchester. I'm happy to contact the Vice-Chancellor and talk to Manchester specifically about this issue and ask them and say, I've had a number of students concerned about this. Can they, at the very least, engage much more with their student body and explain this decision?
Yeah, my son at Southampton's heard nothing for September. Nothing. They've got no information.
Okay. All right. I can also write generically to all vice-chancellors as well and urge them to communicate their plans for September with students. I mean, they are meant to be doing this, so it is disappointing to hear that they're not.
If I may, Tiffany, just before you come in on this, is that we've got a number of universities on this. Manchester and Southampton and Birmingham all seem to be common denominators because you've got your children here on this and who are attending it. Please send me the strands of what you've been engaging with your student union. I will happily take that up and speak to the Vice-Chancellor and make sure we're pushing it. And then I will take that on to the Minister to see how I progress. If they're not responding, then I will use the full weight of the Minister to make sure that they are aware of what's going on. Okay. I mean, we're not trying to shirk this. We're trying to make sure you're getting the proper answers that you deserve as parents and as students at universities. Sorry to interrupt.
And just quickly going back to fees, I mean, I understand that, with the legalities that you have no power, but is there any talk in government about what the plan is with fees? Because if there's going to be a move to even 20% online, I mean, I think the general feeling is that they've got to reduce them. I mean, have you got any plans as government to address this problem?
So fees is something that we are looking at in the Augur review that we will respond to in the autumn. But as I said before, we set the maximum, and then they can charge whatever they want under that. They all decide to charge the maximum. So we say that they have to ensure that the quality is there, because it's less about how it is taught and more about what is taught and the quality of what is taught that is absolutely essential, and the quantity of provision as well. You can't go from I don't know how many hours in person to an hour online, etc. So the quantity has to be there as well. And if a student feels that isn't the case, so if a student feels that they're getting an online element that doesn't have that quality, or that they have had a reduction in the quantity, we would urge them to do a formal complaint to their university. And if they're still not happy after that, then go to a body called the Office for Independent Adjudicator, which is sort of like the ombudsman that a student can go to. And that can lead to a fee reimbursement. We saw some case studies published in the media a few weeks ago where students were getting up to £5,000 back.
But Michelle, with all due respect, sorry to interrupt, that's putting a lot of onus on each individual student. And, you know, surely as government, if you can cap fees, why don't you reduce the maximum? I mean, wouldn't that be sensible if there's going to be a general move to online?
So I don't think there is a general move to online. I think that the media have misinterpreted and misrepresented what is going to happen in the autumn. I think also universities haven't always been clear at articulating and communicating their plans for the autumn. And some may have reserved their kept their powder dry a bit with concern over what's going to happen with COVID. But I don't think we will see a widespread move to online in perpetuity in our universities. And obviously that's not the direction of travel that anybody in this group would want them to go into. It does place an onus on the student, but the reason why we have that system on an individual basis is because across the board, we haven't seen everybody getting poor higher education. We've seen very different higher education over the last year, very challenging, a lack of the student wider experience, not the higher education we would have wanted students to have. But we have seen some examples where students have been getting a poor quality, which is why there's that individual process so that can be assessed on a case-by-case basis.
Minister, if I may, I mean, outside of Manchester, what does Southampton and Birmingham, and just using Southampton and Birmingham as the example, and I know Howard or Alison may want to come in on this, but have you heard anything from those two universities about their course in September?
So I think different courses within each university, they're planning to do different things. I can't speak off the top of my head about exactly which, every faculty and every university, but I'm more than happy to make it, to approach them and reiterate the message of communication.
Forgive me, Minister, that was actually to Tiffany and the rest of the group. I mean, is this just Manchester? Because I've seen a huge amount of press around Manchester, but I haven't seen anything from Birmingham, I haven't seen anything from Southampton, I haven't seen from any other universities. Are you hearing anything?
Yes, so amongst us, all our friends who have children at various universities, the general, especially the new starters in September, all the communication has been, and this is in the southwest, so Bristol, Bath, those universities, has been to tell them it's going to be moving to blended learning.
Just like, because I saw the hand come up, Mrs. Gilmore.
I think that the issue is I don't really think the universities are that worried, especially ones of size of Manchester, who will be setting the tone. If the government isn't really willing to criticise outside of their legislative remit, like if you're not going to do much about it, then I don't see why they'd be worried about. I mean, even there's a 3,000 students signed a petition at Manchester, but if it's just a couple of people sending in their qualms, then why are they going to worry?
So I think, but it's not the case that we're not prepared to stand up or make soundings or criticise universities if it's outside of our legislative remit. We do that all the time. But if a university is saying it is in the students' interest, their students' interest, to teach in a certain way, and they can evidence that by student satisfaction surveys or what have you, then as a government, we cannot be directing how they then have to alter their teaching. If a university turned around to me and said, in September, we're going to do lectures online because of COVID, then I could stand up and say, well, that's absolutely ridiculous because we're in step 4 now, or we will be from Monday. We're restriction free. You shouldn't be in a different track to the rest of the country. Or if we, as a result of their decisions, saw quality was impaired and there were a number of complaints made to the Office for Students or there were concerns raised, then of course we could step in as well. So it's a bit more nuanced, really.
I just think there's clearly a discrepancy because as far as students are concerned, this is in no way ever going to be conducive to a better education. No, it's actually it's very, very concerning how this is affecting education actually. I mean, firstly, the fact that it's online, okay, it brings a whole new thing, all these distractions that can happen, especially people that will be doing Zoom lessons on their phone, people that will be doing it on their laptop. Social media is finding new ways to distract kids and find ways to get them off. It's no way going to be maintain the quality. So I don't think there's really much of a question about this. And whether the universities are able to prove it through grades being similar, it doesn't really matter. It's so much more. It's a mental health thing. It's about it's a bigger thing than just the numbers at the end of the day.
Yeah,
it's-
I'd be
What has your
very
university
surprised.
communicated directly to you in terms of what their plan is?
Well, Manchester have said that there's going to be a blended learning, and they said there's not going to be a reduction in fees, and it's
So
been
have they
vague.
articulated
Yes.
what that blended learning is? Because, you know, blended learning could be 10% online, 90% in person.
But I think the argument is it's nothing. We don't want any. Okay,
You don't want
it's
any
not,
online.
Any lectures that are being moved exclusively online is bad,
It doesn't
and
mean the
that's
quality.
it's not really an option for a higher education. Like, and I don't know. I guess it's easier to look objectively from it when you're not actually at uni. But the opinion of students is that this is a nightmare, an actual nightmare.
Well, listen, if I can, is it Charles, by the way?
Howard, I think you mean.
Howard, beg your pardon.
I'm Howard, yeah.
I'm coming to Howard in a second, but is it Charles? Sorry.
Oh, it's Freddie.
Freddie, listen, I've got no problem taking this up and no problem raising it in the House and making sure people know that we're talking about this. I'm very happy to put the pressure on and to work with the Minister on this and to make sure that we can get the answers and get the suitable response that we need on this. But and please send anything through that you want to me, and so we can get it. And Callum from my office is also on this call, so we can take it up. But yeah, there is room for us to actually put pressure on and to have a conversation, because as the Minister said, they are independent bodies. If you, the consumer, as it were, of their services are unhappy, then you have enormous power in that, and I'm very happy to put my voice to that and make the case for it as well. But you know, persuade your friends and your colleagues who are at university with you as well to make the same point to their MPs to be able to take it up as well, and I'm really happy to do that. Minister, is there anything you want to add, or shall I go to Howard?
No, that's fine. No, that's good, Howard.
Thank you. My son's at Cardiff. He's just finished his first year. He didn't have a minute of face-to-face learning. Never met any of his tutors. Never met anybody else who's studying on his course. Who's studying the same topic. Speaking from having read the communication from Cardiff, and they have been quite clear, and I think this is a Russell Group standard, that they've said that all large lectures or all mass lectures are going to be delivered online, and the only face-to-face tuition is going to be in younger groups. And they specifically state on the Cardiff University website that the reason for that is because of COVID, which I think is, I think where everybody else on this call agrees, that's complete rubbish. My concern about the approach that they're taking is that if the only people that students meet are in small groups, then they're just going to be interacting with the same people over and over again. You're not going to get that wider mix of people in a large hall that spark up a conversation or a relationship with someone that you wouldn't meet under normal circumstances. So I think the phrase, I hate the phrase blended learning. It's a euphemism for a degraded learning experience, and for a university to use. And the Russell Group universities do clearly state that they are moving to blended learning for the safety of the or for the safety of their staff and their students, and they make it clear that blended learning, in their view, is no face-to-face large lectures, and I just think that's it's just not true.
Yeah, I mean, if there are examples of universities using COVID, I'm more than happy to call that out and to criticise that and to hold that up, because we'll be in step 4. We know government restrictions on universities curtailing the way that they teach. It is madness that we would have large events happening and other things, and then universities would not be doing lectures because of COVID. So we certainly won't accept that as an excuse. Cardiff, though, is in obviously in Wales, and education's devolved, so it makes it a bit more complicated. But so I have literally no authority over Cardiff. But I do regularly meet with my counterpart in Wales, and I will raise it with them and my counterpart in Scotland, who will all be experiencing the same kind of scenarios. But if there are other examples of the Russell Group that have clearly printed that, because in my communications with the Russell Group members, they have argued to me that their decision making is not based on COVID, if there are examples that you can find written, please send them to me, because I'm more than happy to call them out.
And just to add to that, I mean, Minister, you've mentioned the Auger review a few times here. Would you be happy to come back and speak to this group when that gets published, just to talk through? Because you've obviously made the point that it is looking at standards, it is looking at fees, it is looking at a whole host of different issues that relate to university education. Would it be all right for me to ask you to come back and speak to this very friendly and nice group?
Yes, yeah, obviously time permitting. I can't guarantee it will be the same week as when we respond, etc. But yeah, more than happy to.
I mean, I think everyone is hitting on the same nail, as it were, here. And I think from my point of view, I've got my work cut out, which is that I need examples from all of you about what your respective universities are doing. I will be writing to your vice-chancellors about what is going on and about my concerns around blended learning and what I essentially view as a cop-out for what you are paying for. I think, Freddie, you articulated it absolutely perfectly, which is the impact of paying for a service that you're getting, half an amount of. So, that is not the way we want to go, and certainly I think universities are going to have to justify it to the nth degree to make sure that you are all getting the service you want. So, if I can just say, and I'll come to you, Tiffany, now. If I can just ask all of you to write to me with the examples of what is going on with your respective universities, I will do the legwork and write to each of them and make sure I get those answers. And I would do that before the week's end, or if you can get it to me as soon as possible, and see if I can come back to answers for you. And I will also keep the Minister informed as to what we're doing. Tiffany.
Yeah, thanks. Michelle, I do understand that you are restricted and, with legalities and so on, and that the press, and we need to confirm this, but can you give me an idea that if, like Howard is saying, we are moving to blended learning and it's 20, 30, 40%, is there anything at any point the government will do? What is your feeling on this? Is it something that would be viewed as acceptable? Would you just stand back and let them do it? Is there anything that can be done or laws changed?
I can't really talk 100% to a hypothetical, because it would depend on what was happening in terms of the quantity of online, the student reaction to that, student satisfaction. We have a national student survey every year as well. If the quality had reduced, if there are a number of complaints about the quality, then we could take action. It's something that we will consider in real time if that becomes a reality, certainly. But I think next steps for me, obviously I've heard very clearly about Manchester today. I will go away and talk to Manchester, but I think I would urge you all to directly contact the faculty at your university and ask them specifically. It may be that now that we've been clearer on step 4, that they can be clearer as well. Did somebody mention Birmingham today? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So I did meet with Birmingham a few weeks ago. I went on a visit there, and they have assured me that their policy will be in person, and that they are very much of the opinion that they want to do as much in person as they're possibly allowed to do, which is fully in our regards. So I would be deeply concerned if Birmingham then was saying one thing to you very proactively to me, very passionately to me, and then something totally different to you. So again, if you can let Anthony know, he can come back to me, because we've got to make sure that they're not saying different things to all of us.
Okay.
Listen, I'm conscious of time. Alison, is there anything you want to come in with? Mr. Mercer, if that's right.
So I'm just trying to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I mean, questions have been answered. I've been making some notes so I can do my own research. In our situation, my son has decided to defer a year because he's unhappy. He's hoping to go to Durham, and he's unhappy about what is happening with tuition, and it would make it very difficult for him to shape the rest of his course if he doesn't have as close to a normal first academic year. He plans to do natural sciences, and he doesn't know where he's going to specialise, and that's why it's so important that his academic experience is as normal as possible. So that's what he's done. He's just decided to wait and see what's happening. But it's certainly given me some food for thought of what I will be asking of Durham, or what he will be asking of Durham, how they intend to it's useful. So I just want to ask about is it the Auger report?
Yeah, so basically a couple of years ago, Philip Auger led a review, so it's known as the Auger Review, and it was to do with further and higher education, and there were a number of recommendations for the government to explore in terms of reforming the sector, and we've been considering those. We were meant to respond to it last year in line with the spending review, which is when, I don't know if you know, but when the Treasury makes spending decisions. However, it was only a one-year spending review because of COVID, and the Auger Review would have long-term implications. So we're anticipating that there will be a 3-year, which is the normal spending review this autumn, and we'll be in a position to then respond to Auger then. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I supposed my son was spooked by is the fact that open days are still remaining virtual, which didn't bode well for how the new academic year was going to look if they can't even allow an open day to happen normally, where students then get a proper feel for the universities they're actually wishing to apply for. Then it didn't bode well for the way the academic year was going to unfold. So yes, it's a shame. I would imagine there are many students who are deciding to defer this year for that reason. And we're just fortunate that Durham have agreed to defer his offer. But I don't know how many other students will have difficulty if they want to defer as well, for the reasons that have been highlighted here. I mean, one thing I suppose that interests me is why fees are so high in this country anyway, compared to some countries in Europe and certainly Australia. And what are students getting extra for that here that they wouldn't get in another country?
Yeah, I mean, they're not comparatively higher than a lot of countries. If you look at America in other instances, I mean, higher education. Yeah, what happened in Australia is that they capped fees, and then they capped them for certain subjects as well, and they've done a state top-up for some of them. But it has produced perverse incentives to go for certain. So there's I'm not explaining this very well. There's different tiers of fees based on the subjects, which has then led to perverse incentives of some students taking sub-subjects, whereas they might have done another subject with a better graduate outcome. So their system is going through a number of issues at the moment. Some subjects actually cost a lot more than the current fees that are charged to students, and there's cross-subsidisation within the system as well. But this is I would love to be in a position where we could obviously reduce fees across the board, but universities have to be able to fund all of their academics, their research, their facilities, and they would argue that is the reason why the fees are set at that level.
How was it funded was it 2012 when they were trebled?
There was a higher government subsidy, basically.
Oh, so there's been a reduction in government subsidy. Oh, okay.
But that said, the government writes off 50% of student loans because only 50% of students pay it back. So the actual government subsidy to higher education is absolutely massive, and it's higher than it's ever been in history because we've got so many students going to university at the moment.
Okay.
Do you consider that to be a good thing?
So what I would consider to be a good thing is that students are taking the best choice for them, making the best. So if they are able to go to higher education, they have the desire to go to education, in higher education, then yes, absolutely, that should be the choice that should be open and available to them, no matter where they're born in the UK. If they'd be better served doing an apprenticeship or going to further education, then I think that they should have that information at their fingertips so that they make sure that they make the best decision based on where they want to end up. Also, we need a much more flexible education system in this country. It's very regimented at the moment. Normally, you finish your school or your college at 18, and if you're going to higher education, you go for 3 years, and that, unless you're doing a master's, that's it. Whereas it's not available and open and accessible to individuals that want to go into higher education later in life, or want to upskill or reskill, and that's why we're introducing a thing called the Lifelong Learning Entitlement by 2025, and that will mean that individuals can have 4 years study at either higher education or a higher technical qualification, and so individuals can do a module, like basically a term. So if there was somebody that was working in a certain sector and they needed to do almost like a bolt-on module to reskill or upskill, they'll have that opportunity. Or somebody that had never even thought higher education would be remotely possible for them, because they've got a mortgage and they've got children and all these other things, they could then potentially go and do it for a term which might be more accessible. So that's what we're trying to do, open up our education system as well as ensure that everybody has the right information, and that universities are not just focusing on getting individuals to the front door. It's also about getting students to complete courses, making sure they've got the support to carry on throughout their degree, and that they leave and then enter into graduate jobs afterwards, so it does add value to their life.
Listen, guys, I am very conscious that we've slightly run over the minister's time. So are there any very brief final comments?
No.
But I think there is a plan of action here, which is, please let me know when you have contacted your various departments. Please let me know any issues you are having with your children and friends' children as well. I'm very happy to take it up. I'm very happy to write on your behalf. I do want to make sure we're getting the right answers for you and at least proper responses on this. Things will become clearer as the measures are put out, and I'm very grateful to you, Minister, for saying that you may come back and speak to us when the Augur review comes out. But your insight has been far more helpful than I could ever have been, and it's massively appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. No, and I look forward to further communications from you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thank
Bye.
you.